Good morning. It is 10:43. This is the Finance and Administration Committee meeting. It is Tuesday, February 6th. And first on our agenda is public comment. If you are providing public comment, please address the chair. You have 3 minutes to speak and let us know where you vote. Public comment? All right. Seeing none, we'll move into the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Support.
To vote, all those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Now opposed, same sign. Next on the agenda is the consent resolutions. We only have one there. Do I have a motion to approve the consent resolutions?
So moved. Support.
Discussion? Seeing none, do we need to do a roll call vote for this one or we can? Okay, so we'll do all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. Consent resolution is approved. Next is the agenda and action items requests. Number 1 is statement of review. The suggested motion is to approve the statement of review. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is there discussion? Seeing none, go ahead and go to a roll call vote.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Number 2 on the agenda is accounts payable for December 22nd, 2023 through January 25th, 2024. The suggested motion is to approve the general claims in the amount of $17,740,481.57 as presented in the summary report for December 22, 2023 through January 25th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And is there discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and go to a roll call vote.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. Moving on to number 3 is the quarterly financial status report. The suggested motion is to receive for information the detailed financial statements for the general fund and mental health fund, as well as higher level summary for the special revenues fund through the end of the first quarter of fiscal year 2024. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is there discussion? You want Karen to come out? Karen can stay seated. It's up to you. Karen, would you like to share?
Good morning, or I guess it's still morning. So this is the quarterly statement from October 1st through December 31st. We are still finalizing and working on fiscal year 23. So as 23 may end a little differently, that will carry into 24. So there could still be some changes to these numbers. Overall, I would say that where we expected to see budget increases in some of our revenues, and we are seeing them. Where we expected to see decreases, we're seeing those as well. And so the trends are aligning with our expectation. I know sometimes the timing is a little different. We don't receive everything equally over the course of the year. Departments, especially in the general fund, tend to spend more equally because such a large portion of what we do is personnel. And so when we process payroll, we are, in fact, pretty equally, but on occasion, you'll see blips where there's maybe a large project or a large expenditure. I didn't note anything of significance in this, this report in that area for the general fund. The There is one correction that we did note that I just wanted to mention in the detail on the mental health fund, the interim statements. There's actually where we provide for comparative data, the 2023, all the way to the right of your report. That very last column, actual audited, that should have been updated to 2023. It was carried over accidentally, and that is 2022. So you're looking at the wrong year for that particular fund, and I apologize for that. I didn't catch it before submitting it, but wanted to mention it.
Thank you. Have any questions of Karen? No, and when you say you're working on fiscal year 2023 still, are you waiting for kind of more revenue to come in, or what's happening when you say that?
So substantially all of the entries are in the system, so they should be reflected, but the auditors are actually scheduled to start in about, I think, 2 weeks, and where they're here for a couple of weeks on site, looking at our records, our statements. The reason it seems like, a long time, but in our statements, there is the component units. So you'll see, for example, water resources, you'll see road commission, dispatch authority. And so the auditors start with those smaller entities and provide us that data, and then we roll it all into one statement before they begin our audit. So it's just kind of the progression of how the county is audited overall.
Thank you very
Mhm.
much. Right. So the suggested motion is to receive for the information and detailed financial statements for the general fund and mental health fund, as well as higher level summary for the special revenue funds through the end of the first quarter of fiscal year 24. I'll go to a vote.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to action item number 4, 2025 budget calendar. The suggested motion is to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the 2025 budget calendar. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
We have discussion. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and go to a vote. Can you do this one as all
However
those
you
in
want.
favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Strategic plan, action item number 5, and the strategic plan funds request. The suggested motion is to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners a request from administration to issue an RFP for up to $100,000 to procure a vendor options for the county strategic plan, with vendor review and approval to be done at the Strategic Planning Committee. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right, in discussion. County Administrator Gibbs, do you have anything you'd like to add to this particular item?
Not in particular. I was able to share, thank you for allowing me to do so, last time at the Strategic Planning Committee, and we have the text here of what we're looking at. So yes, I think in mind, I'm good.
Commissioner Moss?
Yeah, I just appreciate the comparables to Kalamazoo County, Macomb, and parks and things like that. So thank you for including that in there, and looking forward to seeing what kind of options come up.
Great, thank you.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote since this is for $100,000 approximately.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to action item number 6 is the public health FTE request. Suggested motion is to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the request from public health to increase the FTE for a community health nurse from a 0.5 FTE to a 0.6 at a cost of $9,130. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and go to a roll call vote.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to action item number 7 is the seasonal employee wages. Suggested motion is to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the request from Parks to modify pay rates for seasonal employees and annually adjusted by the cost of living provided to the general group T employees. Do I have a motion?
Support.
Is there discussion?
Yeah, just a comment that the Parks Commission meeting, we did talk about this and there was a fair amount of work put into comparing what types of other employers are and what their wages are for seasonal employment. And so this kind of keeps in line with I guess the competition for these positions. And so this was passed by the Parks Commission, recommended.
Thank you for that additional information. I know it is hard for seasonal employees to attract seasonal employees. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. Moving on to action item 8, full faith and credit pledges for drain notes and bonds. I see Joe Bush in the back there. Suggested motion to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners a resolution pledging the county's full faith and credit to the drain note or bonds. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? I think we've done this before.
Hear the usual from Joe.
The usual from Joe.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk or it's up to you? Right.
Good morning, Madam Chair. This is the same resolution that you, the whole full board got before them back in August on the full faith and credit. And the banks are still asking for full faith and credit from the counties. So that's why we put it before you. So that's the only reason. We wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't for the banks asking for it. Any other questions for me? I'm happy to answer, but I appreciate the time.
No questions, but it's helpful to have it explained, especially since we are on YouTube as well, so.
Yep, absolutely. And it is in the packet. Last time I was here, I had the representative from Dickinson and Wright, who we also use as a county. We use them as my department for bond counsel. So that's where the resolution came from. So it's one of our firms that we use internally. Any other questions?
No other-
Always happy to ask.
No questions from me.
Sounds good.
All
Good.
right. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. We will go to a vote and I think we can do this as a, let's do a roll call. Okay.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to action item 9, and that's the Sheriff's Office Vehicle Uplifting Contract. The suggested motion is to review and forward to the Board of Commissioners the contract for the vehicle uplifting services. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Done this before as well. So seeing none, we'll go ahead and we'll go to a roll call vote.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to action item 10, fiscal services, internal audit. Suggested motion is to direct fiscal services in coordination with the Chair of Finance and Administration Committee to conduct an internal audit of ARPA funds received by Ottawa County. The audit should encompass uses and amount of the funds that were dispersed, who these funds were given to, the amount of dollars returned from each account. The internal audit should be completed and presented to the Finance and Administration Committee on March 5th, 2024 during the committee meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? Karen and I had a lengthy discussion this morning. I think we understand kind of next steps. So should be excited about March 5th. It's coming forward. So go ahead.
I'd just like to say thanks for putting this on the agenda. I think it's a great item to really make sure we're providing any oversight if needed and some of these funds. And there's definitely going to be good information coming out of this summary or report, whatever we're going to call it. And I look forward to really seeing some of the detail and then seeing if there's anything else that needs to be done or any action that the county needs, from the board level. Thanks.
Just a comment that, it's kind of a unique time in history where, there's considerable expenses at one time. So I'm just anxious to learn and see what's presented.
So I've got some prepared statement here. I think I will go ahead and read, and it's really to ensure the effectiveness and transparent utilization of the American Rescue Plan, ARPA funds received by Ottawa County. It's really important that we conduct a comprehensive internal audit. This is a unique situation. This audit, directed by Financial Services and in collaboration with the Chair of Finance and Administration Committee. No, I'm not a CPA. It's just that I'm the chair of this particular committee. Aims to scrutinize the use and distribution and the return of the ARPA funds allocated to our county. Scheduled for presentation on March 5th of 2024, this committee meeting. This audit will cover several critical areas. The audit scope is to examine the $57 million awarded to the county and its distribution. And it's kind of started December of 2022, the distribution, with a focus on allocation, disbursement, and any returns. The funds also include what is now this $2.7 million transferred into board initiatives and a better understanding of what that entails and eligibility requirements. The status of the projects that were previously approved and now deemed maybe unnecessary or didn't qualify for those funds. Transparency and accountability is another, avenue of what we're trying to travel here, with the county having until, I think it was 2025 to use all the funds. It's crucial to establish clear guidelines in their use, particularly regarding the $2.75 million that's shifted to the board initiatives fund. The audit will seek to clarify the eligibility and intended uses of these funds, addressing the current ambiguities and ensuring compliance with both federal guidelines and county objectives. Legal and strategic uses of the funds. Given the differing legal opinions on the use of the ARPA funds for initiatives like Habitat for Humanity, the audit will provide a definitive determination on their eligibility for such purposes. This is essential for the county's plan to support 40 families in achieving their first-time home ownership, aligning with ARPA's goals of fostering economic recovery and stability. A comprehensive review and future planning. By accounting for all ARPA funds, including those allocated to the county employees versus the community projects, and clarifying categories like revenue replacement, the audit will offer a clear picture of the fund's impact. This enables strategic planning to maximize the benefit for the county, aligning the ARPA's overarching goals of supporting individuals, families, and the broader community in the wake of the pandemic. So I thank you for entertaining this next objective, and I look forward to what we're going to find on March 5th. Right, so if we could go ahead and vote, that would be great. I won't repeat the whole thing.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. Number 11 is cost of service report. The suggested motion is to direct administration to work with the department heads to create and report cost of service metrics for each department program, including number of FTEs, which is a full-time equivalent, program purpose. Let's see, lost my place here. Number of FTEs budgeted and hired, program volumes, and any other relevant program information, and have that information submitted to the Chair of Finance and Administration Committee by March 5th of 2024. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Is there discussion? And please, County Administrator.
Thank you, Chair Cosby. Developing the cost of service metrics is something I'm very excited about. I think it's going to be a great process to go through and look at these numbers in a different way than we've looked at them before. And that is a big part of the strategic planning process. And it is through that process, I think, we're going to develop a robust set of cost of service delivery metrics. As far as the March 5th deadline, all those metrics will not be finalized by then. I can, of course, get as much as we can by that date, and I look forward to doing that. But the process of fully developing the cost of service delivery metrics is part of the broader strategic plan. And another aspect which I didn't touch on extensively in my presentation was that part of the strategic plan is the high-level mission, vision, and values of the county, and whether or not the board and the county will want to change those and adjust those. And those will have an impact on some of the metrics as well, because we want to be able to track whether the county is meeting those high-level mission, vision, values, et cetera. And so without that process having had taken place, we won't be able to have a fully finalized set of cost of service delivery metrics. I just want to make sure as far as expectations, we understand that. And I can get as much as we can by March 5th, but the full development of those will be throughout the entire strategic plan.
So could you explain to me then what element of this cost of service report won't be available? Because FTEs are part of your budget.
Right.
Programs, we know our programs. Hired FTEs versus budgeted. Is there a program's volume issue?
So
Help me better understand.
the county does not currently collect and view information in terms of cost of service delivery. It's a paradigm shift. And so that's what part of this process is, for example, I was looking at the most recent community mental health annual report, and it reports lots of information, but it doesn't necessarily report things in terms of a cost of service delivery paradigm. So going through all of those numbers and kind of translating or transforming them into what we want to see, which I think is a great process, is what we'll be doing here. Public health, for example, has 17 programs. They have about 27 different pieces of software, most of which are required by the state or the federal government that they have to use in order to track their data. They are not necessarily tracking and collecting data according to cost of service delivery right now, but we can get there and we will get there. It's just a matter of what we can get to by the March 5th deadline. So what I would like to look at is maybe finalizing what data we want to get in the cost of service delivery process, even if we don't necessarily have the data yet for all of those elements, while recognizing as we go through the mission, vision, and values, which we haven't gone through that process yet, that could add additional metrics that we want to look at as well, which would be beyond March 5th, in which case we would add those metrics to what we're looking at for cost of service delivery. So I guess I would say anything that is purely cost of service delivery, not necessarily related to vision, values, mission, we can get what we want to look at, but may not have all the numbers as of that time.
My expectation wasn't that this would be a complete report for the strategic plan. It's one step towards that.
Sure.
And so these are typically data elements that are available on a month-to-month basis in a budget oftentimes. And I appreciate that, you get I think you're talking about volumes in public health and reporting through different software mechanisms. So it might not be readily at your fingertips, but still can be achieved because that's their job, is numbers and trends,
Right.
data collection.
Yes. And to your point, a lot of the numbers are there, but they haven't been crunched, so to speak, in the way that we're wanting to look at them. So that's what a lot of this process is going to be. For example, a community mental health program could say that we served 155 adults with mental illness. What we're trying to look at is how much did it cost per person you served, and how much staff hours, for example, did it cost per person you served, which is something they typically haven't tracked or looked at. In order to get that, it requires information from fiscal and information from HR as well, who also historically have not been involved in looking at things this way. That's why this involves a lot of coordination to take the numbers that we do have and to re-crunch them to be able to look at what we want to see. So that is kind of going to be an ongoing process throughout the strategic plan. So yeah, we do have a lot of the numbers, but we don't necessarily have the process of getting them the way we want to get them.
Commissioner Moss?
Yeah, I feel pretty comfortable with what I'm hearing, and it sounds to me like during strategic planning, there's going to be a lot more built out around some of this, maybe more than FTEs and some of what's here. So I mean, coordinating with the administrator and him with department heads, I think they'll be able to produce a lot of really good data, especially around FTEs. and programs, but then really build it into that in the future as we go through strategic planning and look for some of the more in-depth metrics or some, additional information that needs to be used to, I think the phrase was like to tell that story of the department.
Right, and I'm
Yeah.
not looking to necessarily get to achieve
Right.
that level.
Right.
Really,
Yeah.
truly, these are the basic elements of being able to tell that story. And typically they are on hand.
Sounds good to me.
Any further discussion?
Just a comment that it would seem that as we deploy the budgeting software, this is kind of a critical step. And there's some time required to calibrate, information. If your exports out of one system that's utilized for, federal and state reporting, might have to be massaged a little bit to kind of fit, the new application.
Absolutely.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and we can just go to a vote here. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Action item 12 is the fiscal year 2024 budget adjustments. The suggested motion is to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the FY 24 budget adjustments per attached schedule. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And discussion?
One, one question on one of them, it was listed as a grant from MALF, and I guess I was wondering if there was a grant agreement with that, or if it's just funding that came in.
I don't have a grant agreement. No, not this year. So it wasn't.
It's just an award that came in.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And your name, I'm sorry.
Chris Conrad.
Thank you, Chris. So we will go ahead and go to a roll call vote.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. And moving on to committee reports, our treasurer Cheryl Clark is not able to be with us today. So please refer, she's provided her report in our packet. So please refer to that packet for additional information. Next on the agenda is public comments. Please note that all public comments come my direction and you have 3 minutes. State where you vote. Thank you.
Howdy. From my perspective, all of you are in the same direction, just so you know that. My name is Joe Spalding. I live in Holland Township. My first campaign that I ever worked on was the Claire McCaskill Senate campaign in 2016. And I was running my own office out of Hannibal, doing like 400 volunteer recruitment dials a day. It was pretty intense. We ended up winning that one because Todd Akin famously put his foot in his mouth in a way that actually was precedent for the types of Republicans that would follow him running for office, in saying, and I'm sorry, but he said that a woman couldn't get pregnant if she were legitimately raped because he talked to doctors or whatever. After we had that victory, I ended up getting hired through that campaign to go work in New England on some ACA implementation. That was actually one of the reasons I was so eager to go work for Senator McCaskill, is because saving the ACA allowed my mother, who was going through chemotherapy for lymphoma at the time, Kendra Wenzel, and she was able to keep our house because of that. So I think that that's something that's really personal to me. But anyway, I was out in New England and I ended up getting hired after that gig was over with this firm that did this project management for the government, for the VA's Obamacare upgrades. And the thing that I noticed about VA contracts with the government was that they kept getting strung along, and they would get these contract extensions that would cost taxpayers millions of dollars. And at the core of this was this project management system that I understood as being imported from Silicon Valley. And you would have these tech project managers just list these absolute giant mountains of bullshit reasons why that they should get more taxpayer money and burn it in a furnace for longer. And to sit here and hear that you guys have all metrics in hand for your paradigm shift And to hear the same mountain of bullshit week in, week out come out of John Gibbs's mouth, it makes me wonder, exactly why are we paying this clown $250,000? Like, if you have the metrics in front of you, like, just do the math, make the spreadsheet, quit being lazy. This is pathetic. And this is the same, and it's the same language, right? In those conversations that I heard with those tech project managers giving all of these big, you'd call them deep state, like military industrial complex. And I mean, I'm not going to name names and get huge sued, but you name them, they have a big military contract. They did this work for the VA. And these contracts got screwed over by just gobbledygook from people like John Gibbs. And now it's wasting our taxpayers' money in the hundreds of thousands. This is disgusting.
Thank you.
Karen Ovitz, Spring Lake. I vote in the township, live in the village. So I'm hearing now what I would have expected to hear about this cost of service delivery paradigmatic shift in the way we're going to account for the cost of services that the county delivers to its residents. When I hear Administrator Gibbs acknowledging the difficulty he's facing in trying to shove stats into buckets that weren't designed for that kind of stat, I think, wow, this is going to be a challenge related to services as critical as human health. We certainly wouldn't like to see it rushed. You might end up with initial figures that are misleading and then make very bad decisions on the basis of that. And then again, I would like to be sure that I'm going to see consistency of approach here. So I didn't hear Administrator Gibbs say that there would be any difficulty whatsoever in crunching these types of numbers when it comes to things like maintaining parks or protecting farmland. Again, absolutely critical to the quality of human life, but not quite as essential to everyday living and well-being in a thriving community as our community mental health services and those from the public health department. So again, I am watching and listening with great care to whatever the agenda is or motivation for this beyond just mere oversight. And it makes me quite concerned that there could be something else going on here. So I just want to put you all on alert that this looks like it could be something more than what it appears to be on the surface of just efficiency of cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Going once, twice, 3 times. Thank you. The Finance Administration